I trusted my brother and fiancée, but they planned to trap me with child support. My parents backed them, so I ended the game before it started, exposed the plot, and watched them beg when the truth finally came out. I, 32 male, have a decent job as a software engineer, own my house, basically have my life together. I was engaged to Sarah, 28 female, for about 8 months. We'd been together for 3 years total, and honestly I thought she was the one. She was sweet, funny, great with my family, or so I thought. We were planning this whole future together. You know the drill. Then there's my brother Jake, 29 male. Now Jake's always been what you'd call the charming one in the family. Good-looking, smooth talker, but couldn't hold down a job or a relationship to save his life. Dude's been bouncing between our parents' couch and whatever girl would put up with him for the past decade. Real winner material. The thing about Jake is that he's always been jealous of anything good happening to me. When I got my first programming job, suddenly he was interested in coding too. When I bought my house, he started talking about real estate investing. When I started dating Sarah, he made all these comments about how lucky I was to find someone willing to settle, but I never thought he'd go this far. About 4 months ago, things started getting weird. Sarah had been acting different, distant, secretive, always on her phone. Classic cheating behavior, but I trusted her completely. She'd been dealing with some work stress, so I figured that was it. I'm not the paranoid type who goes through phones or anything. Jake had been coming around more often, which I thought was nice. He'd never really shown interest in hanging out before, but suddenly he's over every weekend, staying for dinner, being all friendly with Sarah. They seemed to get along great, which I was happy about. Family harmony and all that. Sarah started having these girls' nights that would run really late. She'd come home at like 2 a.m., sometimes not until the next morning, saying she crashed at her friend Michelle's place. Again, I trusted her. We all need our space, right? Around this time, Jake started talking about getting his life together. He was applying for jobs, talking about moving out of mom and dad's place, the whole responsible adult act. I was actually proud of him, finally stepping up, you know. Then Sarah started getting sick in the mornings. At first, we both thought it was just stress from work, or maybe she was coming down with something. But when it kept happening for like 2 weeks straight, I suggested she see a doctor. That's when she told me she might be pregnant. I'm not going to lie, I was thrilled. We'd talked about kids, and while we weren't actively trying, we weren't being super careful either. Sarah seemed excited too, but there was something off about her reaction. Like, she was happy but also nervous. I figured it was just the normal anxiety that comes with finding out you're having a kid. We decided to wait a few more weeks to tell our families, make sure everything was progressing normally. But Sarah was acting increasingly weird during this time. Lots of hushed phone calls, more emergencies at work that kept her out late. The weirdest part was how Jake started acting around this time. Suddenly, he's asking all these questions about my job, my salary, my benefits, real specific stuff about my health insurance coverage, and whether it would cover a spouse and kids. He framed it like he was thinking about getting a similar job and wanted to know about the benefits package. I thought it was weird, but Jake had never shown interest in stable employment before. So maybe he was finally growing up. 3 weeks ago, Sarah finally went to the doctor to confirm the pregnancy. She asked me not to come with her because she was nervous and wanted to process it alone first. Fair enough, right? Except when she came back, she seemed more anxious than before. She told me she was definitely pregnant, about 10 weeks along. We did the math, and it lined up with our timeline, so I didn't think anything of it. We started making plans, talking about cribs and baby names. I was over the moon. But then last weekend, everything fell apart. Sarah went to another one of her girls' nights. She left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, which wasn't unusual. We both used it sometimes for random stuff, but when I walked by, I saw she had Facebook Messenger open. Now I wasn't trying to snoop. The conversation was just right there on the screen, but what I saw made my blood run cold. It was a message thread between Sarah and Jake, and not just friendly family chat. The most recent message from that same day was from Jake. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Thanks for covering for us again with your girls' night story." I scrolled up, my hands shaking. Months of messages, months of them planning meetups, talking about how stupid I was for not figuring it out, making jokes about me working late while they were together. But the worst part was the messages about the pregnancy. "Jake, so when are you going to tell him it's mine?" "Sarah, I'm not. He's so excited, and honestly, he'll be a much better father than you'll ever be. Plus, his insurance is amazing and he makes like 3 times what you've ever made." "Jake, fair point. So we just let him think it's his and you both live off his money while I get to see my kid whenever I want." "That's genius, babe." "Sarah, exactly. And if we ever get caught later, child support from his salary will set us up for life. Michelle's lawyer friend says in this state, even if the kid isn't biologically his, if he's on the birth certificate and acts as the father, he's financially responsible. Jake, your friend Michelle is cool with covering for us. Sarah, she doesn't know the details, just that I'm seeing someone I don't want you to know about yet. She thinks it's some married guy from work. I sat there staring at the screen for I don't know how long. These people I trusted completely had been planning to scam me out of potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next 18 years. And that's not even counting the emotional damage of raising a kid I'd love as my own, only to find out years later it was never mine. But here's the thing, I didn't freak out. I didn't smash the laptop or start calling them screaming. Years of debugging code problems at work taught me to stay calm and think logically when everything's going to hell. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every date, every detail of their plan. Then I started thinking about my next move. I called in sick to work Monday and Tuesday, told Sarah I was coming down with something and didn't want to get her sick while she was pregnant. She was so concerned about me, real touching. First stop was a lawyer. Found this guy, Richard, who specializes in paternity cases. Showed him everything I'd found. His exact words were, "Holy shit, this is the most premeditated fraud case I've seen in years." Richard laid out my options. I could confront them and try to work it out, but that would give them time to destroy evidence and come up with excuses. Or I could build an airtight case and hit them with everything at once. Easy choice. We started with a DNA test. Richard knew a private lab that could test paternity even during pregnancy with just a blood sample from the mother. Completely safe for the baby, but it needed to be done without Sarah knowing. This is where it gets a little morally gray. But honestly, after finding out about their scam, I didn't feel bad about it. I told Sarah I was taking her out for a romantic dinner to celebrate the pregnancy. Made reservations at this fancy place she'd been wanting to try. During dinner, I excused myself to go to the bathroom and slipped a mild sedative into her drink. Nothing dangerous. Richard had a friend who's a doctor, and he gave me something that would just make her drowsy. When we got home, Sarah was tired and went straight to bed. While she was sleeping, the private lab tech came over. Quick blood draw and we were done. Sarah never knew. Results came back 2 days later. Jake was definitely the father. Next, I hired a private investigator. I wanted to know exactly how long this had been going on and whether there was any evidence I'd missed. Turns out they'd been sleeping together for almost 6 months. The PI got photos, hotel receipts, the works. But the most interesting thing he found was that Jake and Sarah had been meeting with some lawyer about how to maximize child support payments. They'd done their homework on how to scam me for as much as possible. Meanwhile, I'm acting completely normal at home, asking Sarah how she's feeling, talking about baby preparations, being the loving fiancé. It was honestly harder than I thought it would be. But every time I wanted to break and confront her, I just thought about their messages, joking about how stupid I was. Here's where my family gets involved, and it gets even messier. I decided I wanted to see how deep this betrayal went before I pulled the trigger. So I started having casual conversations with my parents about the pregnancy. My mom was over the moon, already planning to be the best grandma ever. Dad was excited too, talking about teaching his grandkid to fish and all that good stuff. But then I mentioned some concerns I was having about Jake's sudden interest in spending time with us. "I'm just worried he might be feeling left out with all the baby excitement," I told Mom. "He's been asking a lot of questions about my job and insurance lately." That's when Mom got this weird look on her face. "Oh, honey," she said. "Jake already told us what's going on." My blood froze. "What do you mean?" "About the baby," she said. "We know it's his." I just stared at her. Dad chimed in. "Jake explained the whole situation, how you and Sarah weren't really compatible, but you're financially stable and would be a good provider, and how it would be better for everyone if you just raised the baby as your own." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "And you guys think this is okay?" Mom reached over and patted my hand. "Honey, we know this is hard to accept, but Jake is your brother, and that baby will be your nephew or niece. Family takes care of family. What about Sarah lying to me? What about them going behind my back for months?" Dad shrugged. "Look, son, these things happen, but at the end of the day, you've got a stable job and a house. Jake's still figuring his life out. This way, the baby gets the best of both worlds. Jake is the biological father, and you is the provider." "And what do I get out of this exactly?" "You get to be part of your brother's child's life," Mom said. "Plus, Sarah's a good girl. She'll make you happy." I just sat there realizing my parents were not only okay with this plan, they were actively supporting it. Does Sarah know that Jake told you guys? Of course, Dad said. We all talked about it as a family. Well, everyone except you. We were waiting for the right time to bring you into the conversation. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just Jake and Sarah scamming me. This was a whole family conspiracy. My parents were in on it from the beginning. I asked a few more questions and pieced together the full picture. Jake had told them about the pregnancy almost immediately. They'd all sat down together, Jake, Sarah, and my parents, and planned out how to handle telling me and how to convince me to go along with it. They had talking points prepared for if I got suspicious. Sarah was going to cry and say she made a mistake but realized she loved me more. Jake was going to play the "I'm not ready to be a father" card. My parents were going to guilt me about family loyalty. They had contingency plans for if I demanded a paternity test. Sarah would get stressed about me not trusting her and potentially lose the baby from the anxiety. My parents would blame me for putting pressure on a pregnant woman. And if all else failed and I tried to leave, child support laws would keep me financially tied to them for the next 18 years anyway. It was diabolical. Honestly, I almost had to respect how thoroughly they'd thought it through. Almost. That night, I called Richard and told him everything about my parents being involved, about their backup plans, all of it. Jesus Christ, he said. This is criminal conspiracy to commit fraud. We're not just talking about a custody battle anymore. We're talking about serious legal consequences for all of them. Richard suggested we go to the police, but I had a better idea. See, all their planning had one major flaw. They'd underestimated me. They thought I was just some pushover who'd roll over and accept being scammed because family is family. They forgot that I'm actually pretty smart and have resources of my own. I spent the next week preparing. Richard helped me document everything. The paternity test results, the PI's evidence, screenshots of all their messages, even recordings of my conversations with my parents, legal in our state with single-party consent. I also did something else. Remember how Jake had been asking about my job and benefits? Well, I made a few calls to contacts in the tech industry. Jake had actually applied to several companies recently, listing me as a reference. Let's just say those references didn't go well. I may have mentioned some concerns about his honesty and reliability. Jake's job prospects dried up pretty quickly. I also discovered that Sarah had quit her job the week before, supposedly because of morning sickness. In reality, she was planning to be a stay-at-home mom funded by my salary. But here's the best part. Remember Sarah's friend Michelle, who was supposedly covering for their affair? I found out Michelle had no idea what was really going on. She thought she was helping Sarah with a surprise party for me. So, I gave Michelle all the evidence. Turns out she'd been Sarah's friend since college and was absolutely disgusted when she found out the truth. Immediately cut contact with Sarah and actually offered to testify about how Sarah had been lying to her. Last weekend was supposed to be our big reveal to my extended family about the pregnancy. Sarah had planned this whole dinner party at my house with aunts, uncles, cousins, the works. I decided that would be the perfect time to share some news of my own. Everyone was there, about 20 people total. Sarah was glowing, playing the perfect pregnant fiancée. Jake was being extra friendly with everyone, the proud uncle-to-be. My parents were in host mode, making sure everyone felt welcome. After dinner, Sarah stood up to make her announcement. We're so happy to share with everyone that we're expecting our first child. Everyone cheered and congratulated us. Sarah was basking in the attention, talking about due dates and nursery plans. Then I stood up. Actually, I have some news to share too, I said, pulling out my laptop. I've prepared a little presentation about some recent family developments. Sarah looked confused. Honey, what are you doing? I hooked my laptop up to the TV. The first slide was just a simple title, The Truth About the Baby. So, as Sarah mentioned, we're expecting a baby, I said. But there are some details about the situation that I think everyone should know. Click. Next slide. Showed a screenshot of Sarah and Jake's Facebook messages. The room went completely silent. For the past 6 months, my brother Jake and my fiancée Sarah have been having an affair. I continued calmly. The baby Sarah is carrying is Jake's, not mine. Sarah started to stand up. This is crazy. Please hold your questions until the end of the presentation, I said. Slide. The paternity test results. As you can see, DNA testing confirms Jake is the biological father. Jake was white as a sheet. Dude, I can explain. Next slide, I said, ignoring him. Screenshots of their plan to scam me for child support with their messages about how stupid I was highlighted in yellow. As you can see here, this wasn't just an affair. This was a deliberate conspiracy to commit fraud. They planned to let me believe I was the father while using my salary to support Jake's child. More slides. The PI's photos of them together, hotel receipts, evidence of them meeting with lawyers about maximizing child support payments. My family was just staring at the screen in shock, but I wasn't done yet. Now you might be wondering how they thought they'd get away with this, I said. That brings me to the next part of our story. New slide, family support system. Screenshots of my conversations with my parents where they'd admitted they knew about the plan and supported it. It turns out this wasn't just Jake and Sarah's idea. My parents have been part of this conspiracy from the beginning. Mom started crying. Dad tried to speak, but I kept going. They believe that because I have a stable job and Jake doesn't, it would be better for everyone if I just accepted being defrauded. After all, family takes care of family, right, Dad? The room was dead silent, except for Mom sobbing. So, that brings us to the conclusion of tonight's presentation, I said. Sarah, the engagement is off. You have 30 days to move out of my house. Jake, we're no longer brothers. Mom, Dad, you can continue your relationship with Jake and Sarah's baby, but you're dead to me. I clicked to the final slide. Questions? The room exploded. Sarah was screaming about how I'd humiliated her in front of the whole family. Jake was trying to explain that it just happened and he never meant to hurt me. My parents were begging me to reconsider, saying we could work it out as a family. My extended family, to their credit, were disgusted. My uncle literally told Jake he was a piece of shit and walked out. My cousin asked Sarah how she could do something so evil. My aunt hugged me and said I deserved better. One by one, my relatives left. Most of them stopped to tell me they supported my decision and were proud of me for handling it so well. Soon it was just me, Sarah, Jake, and my parents left in my house. That's when the real begging started. Sarah was in full meltdown mode, alternating between trying to convince me she loved me and threatening to destroy me if I didn't take her back. At one point, she actually said, "You can't just throw away 3 years over one mistake that lasted 6 months and involved elaborate planning to defraud me of hundreds of thousands of dollars."
Sure, Sarah.
Jake tried the brother card. Come on, man, we can work this out. Family is family. The same Jake who'd been joking with Sarah about how stupid I was while planning to steal my money for the next 18 years. My parents were the worst, though. They kept talking about how I was tearing the family apart and how I needed to be the bigger person. Dad actually said, "This is what family does for each other." I just looked at him and said, "You're right, that's exactly what family should do for each other, which is why what you did is so unforgivable." Eventually, I told them all to get out. Sarah tried to pull some legal stuff about tenant rights, but Richard had already prepared eviction papers. Jake tried to stay and talk it through, but I threatened to call the cops. My parents were the last to leave. Mom kept crying and saying I was making a mistake. Dad tried one last guilt trip about how I'd regret this when I was older and alone. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who think so little of me, I told them. That was 2 weeks ago, and the aftermath has been wild. Sarah moved back in with her parents, who apparently had no idea about any of this. Her mom called me to apologize and said they were horrified by what Sarah had done. Her dad offered to pay me back for any money I'd spent on wedding preparations. Sarah's been trying to contact me through mutual friends, social media, even showing up at my work, each time with a new story about how sorry she is and how we can make it work. My favorite was when she claimed she was only with Jake because I wasn't emotionally available enough. Apparently, having an affair and committing fraud was just her way of getting my attention. Jake's been having a rougher time. Remember how his job prospects mysteriously dried up? Well, turns out when you're involved in a conspiracy to commit fraud, word gets around. He's basically unemployable in any legitimate field now. He's also been cut off by most of our extended family. Turns out when people find out you tried to scam your own brother, they don't want much to do with you. Last week he called me crying, saying he was sorry and asking if I could put in a good word for him with potential employers. I told him to lose my number. My parents have been the most persistent. They started with anger, moved to bargaining, and now they're in the depression phase of grief. Mom calls me every few days, usually crying, talking about how she just wants her family back together. She keeps saying things like, "Jake made a mistake, but he's still your brother." And Sarah was confused. "But you two were so good together." Dad's been trying the practical approach, talking about how much money I'd waste on legal fees and how it would be easier to just work it out within the family. They don't seem to understand that this isn't about money or convenience. This is about the fact that the people who are supposed to love and protect me spent months planning to scam me. Richard's been having a field day with this case. Apparently, it's rare to have such clear-cut evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. We've filed criminal charges against Jake and Sarah for fraud and conspiracy. The prosecutor loves the case because we have everything documented: messages, DNA evidence, witness testimony, the works. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue that she was just a confused pregnant woman who made bad decisions. That argument fell apart when Richard showed them the messages where she was calculating how much child support she could get and joking about how easy I was to manipulate. Jake's lawyer tried to claim it was all Sarah's idea and Jake was just going along with it. That didn't work either, since we have messages of Jake suggesting ways to maximize the financial benefits of their scheme. The civil case is even more interesting. Richard thinks we can go after them for intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, and a bunch of other stuff. The financial damages alone could be substantial. We're talking about 18 years of child support they were planning to steal, but honestly, I don't need their money. I just want them to face consequences for what they did. Here's the weird thing. My life has actually gotten a lot better since this all happened. First, I found out who my real friends and family are. My extended family has been incredibly supportive. My uncle offered to help pay for legal fees. My cousins have been checking in on me regularly. Even some of Sarah's friends reached out to say they were disgusted by what she did. Work has been great too. My boss found out about the situation. Small town, word travels fast, and told me to take all the time I needed. Apparently, he went through something similar with his first wife and completely understood. I've also been sleeping better than I have in months. I didn't realize how much stress I was carrying from Sarah's weird behavior and lies. Now that I know the truth, even though it sucks, it's actually a relief. I know it's only been 2 weeks, but I'm already thinking about getting back out there. For anything serious, I need time to process all this, but just to remind myself what it's like to be around honest people. My cousin set me up with one of her friends last weekend. Just a casual coffee date, but it was nice talking to someone who wasn't planning to defraud me. She knew the whole story, small town, remember? And was amazed by how calmly I'd handled everything. She said most guys would have lost their minds and done something stupid. I told her that losing my mind wouldn't have solved anything. The best revenge was letting them destroy themselves with their own greed and stupidity. Yesterday, something interesting happened. Sarah's parents called and asked if they could meet with me. We met at a coffee shop and they told me they'd been doing some digging into Sarah's behavior over the past few months. Apparently, this isn't the first time she's done something like this. Her mom found out that Sarah had been stealing money from her previous job. Small amounts over several months, but enough that it would have been noticed eventually. She quit right before she would have been caught. Her dad discovered that Sarah had been lying to them about Jake, too. She told them that Jake was just a friend who was helping her plan a surprise for me. They had no idea about the affair or the fraud. They wanted me to know that they didn't raise her to be like this, and that they supported my decision to press charges. Her dad even offered to testify in court if it would help. It was actually really validating to hear that even Sarah's own parents thought what she did was unforgivable. Jake's situation keeps getting worse, and honestly, I'm here for it. He's been couch surfing since our parents basically kicked him out after the family dinner incident. Turns out even they have limits on how much embarrassment they'll tolerate. Last week he got arrested for trying to break into my house. My security cameras caught everything. He claimed he just wanted to get his stuff, but the stuff he was trying to take was my electronics and some cash I keep in a drawer. The police weren't amused by his explanation that he deserved compensation for emotional damages. He's also been spreading lies about me around town, telling people I set him up and that I'm a psychopath for planning such elaborate revenge. The funny thing is, most people's response is good for him. Turns out, when you try to scam your own brother, people don't have much sympathy for you. My parents made one final attempt to fix things this week. They showed up at my house with a family meeting plan. They wanted all 4 of us, me, Jake, Sarah, and them, to sit down with a neutral mediator, Mom's pastor, and work through our issues. I told them that the only family meeting I was interested in was the one where they explained to a judge why they thought conspiracy to commit fraud was acceptable. Mom started crying again. Dad got angry and said I was destroying the family over money. That's when I lost my patience. This isn't about money, I said. This is about the fact that you raised one son to be a decent human being and another one to be a parasite. And when push came to shove, you chose the parasite. Jake is still your brother, Mom sobbed. No, I said. Jake is a stranger who happens to share some DNA with me. Brothers don't try to steal from each other. They left after that, but not before Dad made one last threat about making me regret this decision. I just smiled. and reminded him that threatening someone who's already pressing criminal charges against his other family members probably wasn't the smartest move. The best part of all this has been seeing how my community has responded. My neighbors have been incredible. Mrs. Williams next door brought me home-cooked meals for a week. The guy across the street offered to help upgrade my security system for free. Even people I barely know have been supportive. The barista at my regular coffee shop heard about what happened and started giving me free extra shots. The mechanic who works on my car refused to let me pay for my last oil change. It's been a good reminder that most people are decent and that what my family did isn't normal or acceptable. Update posted 2 weeks later. Holy shit, you guys. Just when I thought this story was over, it gets even crazier. Sarah had the baby last week. Healthy kid, thank God. Because despite everything, I wouldn't want an innocent child to suffer. Here's where it gets interesting. Remember how Jake was supposedly the father? Well, Sarah demanded a paternity test as soon as the baby was born. Turns out Jake isn't the father either. According to the test, the real father is some guy named David, who Sarah had been seeing before she started the affair with Jake. So, not only was Sarah cheating on me with Jake, she was also cheating on both of us with this other guy. The timeline means she was juggling 3 different guys and didn't know which one was the father. Her plan was to pin it on whoever would be most financially beneficial. Jake's reaction was priceless. He called me crying, saying he was so sorry for putting me through all this for a baby that wasn't even his. Like that somehow makes the fraud attempt okay. The funniest part, this David guy is broke, like living in his car broke. So Sarah's grand plan to secure financial support backfired spectacularly. Now she's a single mom with no job, no savings, and no support from any of the men she was manipulating. Jake's lawyer is trying to use this new information to get the charges dropped, claiming Jake was also a victim of Sarah's manipulation. My lawyer's response was basically tough shit. Being manipulated into committing fraud is still committing fraud. My parents are now trying to distance themselves from the whole situation, claiming they were misled by Jake and Sarah. Too little, too late. The best part of this update, I'm completely free.